on March 19th. On item number 139-24, which was a request to further extend non-conforming FAR and lot coverage at 157 Baldpate Hill Road. Land use approved that, 8-0. Number 142-24, request to allow oversized dormers in a detached accessory building at 20 Wachusett Road. That was also approved, 8-0. Number 143-24, request to exceed FAR at 27 Cross Hill Road. Land use approved, 7-1. Number 145-24, a request for an extension of time to exercise permit number 33-23 at 296 Watertown Street, was approved, 7-0. Number 146-24, another request for an extension of time to exercise special permit number 80-22 at 162 Middlesex Road. Number 69-24 is on second call. And number 80-24, request to allow a series of retaining walls exceeding 4 feet in height in the front setback at 161 Pine Ridge Road, was approved, 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kelly. Councilor Baker for Zoning and Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. The committee report is found on page 74. This begins on page 73, but the operational portions are page 74, and we have 3 items to report on first call. They're all appointments or reappointments. The first is item 154-24, appointment of Rosmi Efiki to the Economic Development Commission. The second is 155-24, appointment of Hedy Jaras to the Economic Development Commission. And number 156-24, reappointment of Charles Tanowitz to the Economic Development Commission. And all other items were held. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. I just want to make sure people know that Councilor Gentile has joined us. And let's go on to programs and services. Councilor Humphrey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The report for programs and services begins on page 75, and of the items that were actually approved, those were 134-24, reappointment of Matthew Volpe to the Commission on Disability, and 135-24, reappointment of Sandra Langley to the Commission on Disability, both approved 6-0. I don't think anything else was actually voted on. And then I need to ask for a suspension of the rules because of a late filed item.
Okay.
Be 176-24, requesting authorization to transfer $165,000 for the tennis courts at Newton South High School.
Great. Councilor Humphrey's asking for suspension of the rules to accept a late file docket item. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Aye. All right, Councilor Humphrey.
Concludes the programs and services report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public safety and transportation, Councilor Downs.
Thank you, Vice President Kalis. Boy, that came up fast. We're whipping through our agenda. The Public Safety and Transportation Committee met on March 20th. We had 3 items up for discussion. All 3 were held. However, I would like to just point out that the traffic calming report, particularly the charts and maps, are of high interest both to my colleagues and to the general public because it lists every road that has been nominated for traffic calming and has them prioritized and explains what criteria they use to prioritize them by, so you can get a sense of when you might see some improvements to your street. And I move the report.
Thank you, Councilor Downs. Okay, public facilities with Councilor Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. We had no meeting, so therefore there is no report, but I do have a late filed item. So I need a suspension of the rule to accept docket 179-24, which is Councilor Albright on behalf of the Public Facilities Committee requesting a discussion about the Framingham Network geothermal project with Eversource. This discussion should include neighborhood selection, pros and cons of the project learned to date, and costs and feasibility of scaling this project citywide.
Councilor Albright is asking for suspension of the rules to accept a late file docket item. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay,
I
thank you.
also have one public hearing to announce. This is for April 3rd, 2024, 173-24, Eversource Energy petitioning for a grant of location to relocate 2 poles on Pearl Street in Jackson Road.
Thank you, Counselor Albright. Counselor Gentile with Finance, please.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. The finance report begins on page 77. The first item to report out is 131-24, honor the mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend a reimbursement grant of $25,600 from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for a preparedness grant to improve operations of Newton's Emergency Operations Center. This was approved by a vote of 7-0. The next item was 87-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting a discussion and possible ordinance amendments to update the fees related to special permit, zone change, and site plan review fees requested by Planning, City Clerk's Office, and the Law Department. This was also approved by a vote of 7-0. I'd like to ask for a suspension of the rules to accept a late file item, which is 175-24. That item is the proposed water, sewer, and stormwater rates, and I would ask for a suspension of the rules to accept the item.
Thank you. Counselor Gentile is asking for a suspension of the rules to accept a late file docket item. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no? Okay, thank you, Counselor Gentile.
And my final request is I would like to be recognized to schedule a public hearing on that same item, 175-24, the water, sewer, and stormwater rates. The public hearing is scheduled for the 6th of May. And with that, I would move the report.
Thank you, Counselor Gentile. Real property reuse, Counselor Danberg.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The one item that we had at our meeting on 3/27 was held. So there is no report today.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Counselor Danberg. And then for the committee of the whole meeting, Counselor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We had one item, 16124, discussion on the findings of the Community Dialogue Working Group. That item was held with a vote of 21-0. And I will simply add that the working group is looking forward to bringing forward the next level of detail as was discussed during the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Oliver.
Otherwise, there is no report.
Okay, thank you. Before we vote, just want to let everybody know, we realize there are a lot of late file docket items. The President and I are working with the administration to make sure that we get those in time so we don't have those in the future. So apologize for all of that. If we could call the roll.
Counselor Albright. Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bigsby.
Aye.
Counselor Block.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Farrell.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
Aye.
Counselor Getz.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman. Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Malachy.
Aye.
Counselor Mickley. Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
And President Laredo.
Aye.
So it's 22-0 the items are passed.
Great, thank you. All right, so moving on, we have one item on second call. This is land use. So, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you again, Mr. Acting Chair. This is item number 69-24, which is a request to allow a parking stall within 5 feet of the street and to waive parking stall depth at 113 Edinburgh Street. This item had been before us once before in January, and it was held as the petitioner wanted to conduct another survey to see if some of the dimensions had changed that would not make such a waiver necessary. And it turned out that the numbers were not that much different. So we heard it again on March 19th. And while there was a lot of sympathy for the homeowner young family, ultimately we voted to deny this petition to allow the parking within 5 feet of the street for a number of reasons, excuse me, most of which really relate to safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Part of this stall length would be overlapping city-owned property, which concerned several members of the Land Use Committee. The substandard length was a concern also because we can't insist that the homeowners, the current ones or future ones, own vehicles of a certain length. We can't restrict the length or the size of the vehicles that may be living in this, dwelling at this home. So the substandard length was a problem. The front setback was a problem also because there is a privacy fence along the side separating the next door neighbor, which makes visibility a problem. Backing out of this parking stall, you would not be able to see people coming down the sidewalk. So there was really a lot of concern over pedestrian safety. Our vote was to deny the petition. That was a vote of 4 to 1 to 2. And happy to leave it at that and hear about the second call.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I think Councillor Albright, you put this on second call?
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. First of all, I just wanted, there was a lot of interest generated by my putting this on second call, and I just wanted to point my colleagues' attention to our rules, which on page 11 say something like, any member wishing to vote against the recommendation of the Land Use Committee on a petition for a special permit, site plan approval, or related zone change shall request a second call on such an item and explain the rules. So that is, in fact, why I put it on second call, because I do not plan to support the Land Use Committee's vote. I went out to the Edinburgh Street twice, and tonight I went again at 7 o'clock so you can really see who's parked there and what they're doing. There are, it turns out, I thought there were 4 houses that had similar parking problems. It turns out there are 7 houses that have similar parking problems. There is 153 and 155 have exactly the same situation that was asked for by the petitioner, only in their cases, the driveway pulls right up and the car pulls right up to the front steps of the house, both 153 and 155, and they go right to the edge of the property. 159 has 2 cars on the edge, 160 has a short driveway with 1 car room, 151 has a car parked in the front yard. The duplexes at 130 and the 126 and 128 all have 2 tandem parking cars, and it was at the meeting I talked about these 2 tandem parking cars that go right up to the edge, and the retort was that they could pull in further if they wanted to, but they can't. I mean, you will see that the driveways are short. Either it's the driveway, the length of the driveway, or there's garbage cans that they can't pull up any further than that. So, and actually the next door neighbor who actually spoke at the hearing against this has exactly the same position. He has a small car parked in the front part of his property. And then on the other side of the privacy fence is a car, which you wouldn't see if you go there earlier in the day, parked right at the edge on the other side of the privacy fence. So there's a lot of safety problems on that street. But for me, for the reasons of fairness, I will not be voting for this land use petition because it asks to deny the petition, and there is so many properties doing exactly the same thing. It just doesn't seem fair to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albright. Are there other councillors who want to speak? Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I did vote for denial in committee, and I'm going to vote to deny again. The parking stall is 15.3 feet in length. Our ordinance requires 19 feet in length, so it's almost 4 feet short. The relief is for a shortened parking stall and to park in the front setback. I believe this will, if approved, will create a huge public safety risk on that street. And the three reasons why I voted against this have to do with the size, the spot, and the location of the parking stall. The size is 15.3 feet. The ordinance requires 19. This is in the front setback. If you go to the committee report, and on the last couple of pages, there are images that the petitioner provided, which literally show the car right up to the point where the sidewalk begins. I think it was Councilor Kelly mentioned that there is a fence that will be right next to that parking stall. If you're backing out, you cannot see anyone walking down the sidewalk. I also voted against it because the location of this, and by location, I mean where it is on the street. This is the third house in from Watertown Street. The Yogurt Beach, a very popular place for students and children and families, is 3 lots down from this proposed parking stall. It is in between Albemarle Field and which also the Albemarle Field leads into the day school. So you have a lot of activity in this side street, which is next to Watertown Street, which is a busy road. If this property was the last house on a dead-end street, I would vote to approve the parking stall. But because of the location of the lot, where it is, this is going to create a huge public safety risk, and that is why the committee voted to deny this petition, and that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Councilor Farrell?
Thank you, Vice President Kalus. It's always hard to argue against the law, but I do want to thank my colleague, Councilor Albright, for the work that she did in noting that unfortunately on this street, the law is broken every
Councilor Farrell, is your microphone on?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I'll speak more clearly into it. I'm sorry. The law is broken every single day of the week and the year on this street. I understand what Councilor Lucas is also pointing out about safety. I think that same argument could be made for the 4th house on the street, which is on the other side of that fence. People can't see cars coming in and out of there, and the driver of that car cannot see children coming up the street. The very fact that there is a very popular yogurt store on Watertown Street on which there is no parking allowed, and therefore all people who come to the yogurt place, if they're not walking, will park on this street, which makes it extremely difficult, particularly in the first 3 or 4 spaces, which this house would like to use, makes it virtually impossible for them. This is an extraordinary situation that it is absolutely impossible to put a parking place on this property because of the way the land was divided 150 years ago. Yes, it would overhang, but even as we saw, it was probably only a matter of a couple of inches. Again, I admit I'm arguing against the law, but out of a matter of fairness and the need to really look at trying to support this young family that wants to live in Newton, has a 14-month-old child, is expecting another child. The only place that this family can find a place to park during the winter is 5 blocks away. And so the husband has determined that he would rather break the law and park in front of the house in case he should need it for medical reasons, which is also a little outrageous to me. So, and the final is this law is going to, it will not make any difference in about a month when the no parking rule is ended for the summer. I would ask this group to please have some consideration for the status of the family, for the status of the property not being able to park in any other location, and for fairness, that if we're going to enforce the law, let's enforce it on the entire street. And if we need the police to do that, then we should do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Downs?
Thank you, Vice President Kalis. I listened very carefully the night of the hearing. I was not able to stay for the final vote, but I'm going to share my thoughts on it in light of my colleagues' comments. I absolutely felt for the family. Very cute kid, sweet-looking family. Understand your, qualms about not being able to jump right into your car in your driveway and drive off to get to where you need to go in the heat of the moment, and we know that kids have emergencies. But they bought where they bought, and they knew what they were buying. Which is not to say that, in other circumstances, I wouldn't say, sure, put in a driveway. Put an extension or a dormer on, put in that extra bedroom, and we've voted for a lot of those. In this case, we're looking at a school route. I think Councilor Lucas described some of the layout extremely well. The fact that other people are not obeying the rules or zoning rules about where you can park is not before us. What's before us is this house. So I did a little poking around over the weekend and, asked some of the neighbors, where are they parking now in the winter? And in fact, they've been offered a neighbor's driveway on occasion, and work is being done in the house and they can't be on the street, or for whatever reason it's parked up, and they rent down the end of Edinburgh Street from another neighbor. Now, right now, it may be somewhere 5 blocks away, but again, while it is unfair for the law to be enforced in this case against one family and not against the others, again, that's not before us. However, even if we were able to fix all of those things, this driveway could not conform. And we're balancing the notion of fairness, which I value, against the safety of a lot of kids who use this as a school route on foot, which is how we want them to get to school. We don't want them all driven there because it's so unsafe to get there on foot. So if we ever want to make Newton less dependent on cars and give children and parents options other than driving, we have to do everything we can when it's before us to make walking and biking safer. And therefore, I will be voting to deny.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Councillor Block.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kalis. This item comes before us in our quasi-judicial role. We're not sitting here as legislators when we consider this item. That's true in committee, and that's true in the entire body. So the question before us, as Councillor Downs phrased somewhat differently, will this have an adverse effect on the community? And it's hard to draw any other conclusion than it will. It's unfortunate, but it will. I think this situation cries out for a legislative analysis and for us to consider whether, under certain hardship circumstances, street parking should be permitted during the winter months when we have an overnight winter parking ban, at least for the moment. And I'd encourage us all to think very hard about pursuing that. But in light of what our responsibilities are now, I'll be voting against this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Block. Is there anybody else that wants to speak on this item? Councillor Getz.
Okay, here we go. My first. I went actually to the site this afternoon, and it was right around 3 o'clock, or when all the children were milling about at the intersection with Watertown Street, and I am very concerned. It's the bend in the road. It's also the substandard street. It's the proximity and the children that are crossing at that intersection. It's also the safe streets to school designation. And I just am very not in support of setting the precedence of allowing a substandard parking stall in the front setback. Actually, at some level, it's going to even possibly, potentially down the road, block the sidewalk. So I will not be voting in support of this petition.
Thank you, Councillor Getz. I'll go to Councillor Grossman.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I've changed my mind a few times during it because my colleagues have been so persuasive in many ways. But where I come out, I'm actually reflecting the most on Councillor Albright's comments as well as Councillor Block's comments. And I think that when we're considering whether this is going to have an adverse effect on the neighborhood, it doesn't feel to me that it will, in light of all of the existing behavior around this home. In this case, to me, fairness dictates that I vote against the recommendation of the Land Use Committee, and that's why I raised my hand to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grossman. Councillor Danberg?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Acting President. I too have been listening to everybody's comments, and it's this is not a straightforward decision, I think, for any of us. I have decided that I'm going to support the land use decision of denial. I understand that there are other homes on the street that are violating, but the comment that we cannot mandate in the future the size of the car that the family that might own this house in the future would have, and because a land use petition, a special permit rather, runs with the property in perpetuity, I don't feel that I can in good conscience vote to legalize an unsafe condition. So I will be supporting the land use decision to deny.
Thank you, Councillor Danberg. Councillor Malachy.
Thank you. I also will be supporting the land use decision to deny for the same reasons that I expressed concerns about during the meeting. I think there's a difference between two cars squeezing into a space that isn't really officially big enough for two cars unofficially that they could move further up, and this situation where there's barely or not quite room for one car and no margin for error and no opportunity for a bigger car to fit in the same space. I also feel that people have to take responsibility. When you buy a house with no parking, you know what you're buying, to make the biggest investment of your life on the strength of talk to Councilor Albright and she'll help you get a parking space. Seems like not a wise move to make. I also feel that, you know, if we're, the houses in Newton with insufficient parking, whether it's no space or one space or only tandem spaces, they're less expensive for that reason. It's all wrapped up in the value of the house, and it presents an opportunity for people to buy into Newton at a lower cost than they might otherwise if they're willing to live car-free, car-light, one-car family instead of two instead of three, whatever. And that's something we're supposedly trying to incentivize. So I think it's not the appropriate location to make an exception. If it were, you know, off in the woods at the end of a long, long road by itself, you know, possibly it wouldn't make any difference to anyone. But here you've got a situation, regular pedestrian traffic, school kids, and we shouldn't be making decisions also based on the sort of sympathy of the people in the house, since the special permit goes with the property. And I've heard over and over again that you make the decisions based on the features of the property, and is it a good thing to do or a bad thing to do, and not based on the people making the request. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Malachy. Councilor Lipoff.
I'll be voting to uphold the decision of the Land Use Committee for all the reasons that have been eloquently stated. One of the frustrating things on land use in my tenure, and I think everybody can agree, is that people often come and tell us why they're asking for these things. And, you know, we appreciate the stories and we feel really good when we can give them what they want. But we always remind the petitioners and the committee that this is about the person they're going to sell the house to, or two people from now. And it's not that we're cold, but we're looking at a land use decision and not a family decision or a human decision in that way. And for this would create a precedent that we don't want to create with undersized spaces for the safety reasons. And I also feel that we should never say everybody on the street's breaking the rules. Everybody's making it dangerous for pedestrians, so let's let it go. That doesn't fly with me either, so I will be upholding the land use decision.
Thank you, Councilor Lipoff. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, let's call the roll. An aye here would be supporting the committee report, and a nay would be not supporting the committee report. Yes. Okay.
Councilor Albright?
No.
Councilor Baker?
Aye.
Councilor Bigsby?
Aye.
Councilor Block?
Aye.
Councilor Danberg?
Aye.
Councilor Downs?
Aye.
Councilor Farrell?
No.
Councilor Gentile?
Aye.
Councilor Getz?
Aye.
Councilor Greenberg?
Aye.
Councilor Grossman?
No.
Councilor Humphrey?
Aye.
Councilor Kalis?
Aye.
Councilor Kelly?
Aye.
Councilor Krinsman? Councilor Leary?
Aye.
Councilor Lipoff?
Aye.
Councilor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councilor Lucas?
Aye.
Councilor Malachy?
Aye.
Councilor Mickley? Councilor Oliver?
Aye.
Councilor Wright?
Aye.
And President Laredo.
Aye.
The motion to approve the recommendation of denial passes 19-3.
Thank you, and thank you, colleagues. That's the last item. Councillor Leary?
A motion to get out of here.
All right, thank you. We conclude the meeting at 8:21. Thank you.